Imagine a man who could charm anyone he met, a smooth-talking law student with a friendly face and a magnetic smile. But behind that smile lurked a nightmare beyond anything most people could imagine. This is the story of Ted Bundy, a man who used charm as his weapon, trust as his disguise, and left a trail of devastation across the country. What drove him to such darkness, and how did he manage to deceive so many for so long? In this documentary, we unravel the chilling mystery of a killer who changed the way we understand evil forever. Stay with us as we dive into one of the most terrifying stories of our time. This is the story of a killer whose charm and confidence disguised one of the darkest minds in history. Ted Bundy was a man who walked among us, a man who appeared normal, friendly even, yet held unimaginable secrets within. He wasn't a lurking stranger. He was someone who blended in, hiding in plain sight. To some, Bundy was the clean-cut law student, the political worker, the friendly neighbor. But behind his smile was a chilling truth. He was a predator, one who left a trail of terror across America, killing more than 30 young women. His story is not just a tale of crime, but a look into the darkest sides of humanity. Tonight, we pull back the mask to reveal the terrifying reality of Ted Bundy, the killer who used charm as his weapon. This story begins with his early years, where cracks in his seemingly normal life would show the first signs of the evil within him. Ted Bundy was born in Burlington, Vermont, on November 24, 1946. His mother, Louise, was just 22, unmarried, and pressured by her family to keep Ted's birth a secret. Louise's parents, ashamed of the out-of-wedlock pregnancy, decided to raise Ted as their son, telling him that his mother was his sister. This lie would haunt him. Bundy's early life was filled with deception. His grandparents were his parents, his mother was his sister, and the truth about his real father was hidden from him. His grandfather was known to have a violent temper and would mistreat the family, leaving young Ted in an unstable environment. Despite this, he grew up to be a bright, curious boy. People around him described him as intelligent and charming, but friends and family noticed something darker. Ted was different. He was secretive, cold, and had an obsession with power and control from a young age. As he grew older, Bundy struggled to fit in. In high school, he felt isolated, shy, and disconnected from others. He became increasingly drawn to dark subjects, especially crime and violence. He began spying on neighbors, engaging in petty theft, and indulging in fantasies of power over others. By the time he reached college, Ted had mastered his mask of charm. He was well-liked, dated beautiful women, and impressed professors. But inside, his darkness was growing. He would spend hours alone, reading crime stories and imagining violent scenarios. Ted eventually moved to Seattle to attend the University of Washington, where he met a woman who would have a profound effect on his life. She was beautiful, sophisticated, and everything he wanted. But when she broke up with him, it triggered a rage in him that would lead to his transformation from a troubled man into a brutal killer. After the breakup, Ted fell into a deep depression. He became withdrawn, angry, and filled with resentment. That rejection stayed with him, simmering beneath the surface. He wanted revenge, not just on her, but on all women who reminded him of her. This was the beginning of his dark transformation. Ted's need for control over others grew. He enrolled in law school, but it didn't satisfy him. He was looking for something else, something darker. He began practicing his ability to deceive, to manipulate those around him, perfecting his charm and gaining people's trust. And by 1974, that rage and need for power reached a breaking point. It was then that he decided to act on his darkest desires. The charming young man that everyone thought they knew was about to show his true nature. He would begin his reign of terror that would make him one of history's most infamous killers. In January 1974, Bundy committed his first known murder. Linda Ann Healy, a bright, promising student, vanished from her home in Seattle. No one knew how she disappeared, but the investigation revealed chilling details. She had been taken from her bed, leaving behind traces of blood. As weeks passed, more young women began to go missing, all with similar characteristics. They were young, attractive, and usually students. Bundy's strategy was cunning. He would approach women, pretending to be injured, using crutches or a cast, and ask for help. Once they were close enough, he would overpower them. The police were baffled. There was no pattern, no clear method, just a series of disappearances. But for Bundy, the game had only just begun. His thirst for control and domination over his victims grew with each attack. As pressure mounted in Seattle, Bundy knew he needed to expand his hunting grounds. He moved to Utah in the fall of 1974, enrolling at the University of Utah's law school. The disappearances continued, now spreading terror across multiple states. In Utah, he continued his twisted methods, luring young women into his car with promises of help. Each time, he used his charm to make them feel safe, to make them trust him, only to betray them in the most horrifying way possible. Bundy's cruelty knew no bounds. In one night, he would attack several women, using the quiet of night and the trust of strangers to his advantage. Women lived in constant fear, locking doors, avoiding strangers, and staying in groups. But Bundy was always one step ahead. As the year went on, Bundy's appetite for for violence seemed to grow. In 1975, he began a killing spree that would stretch across Utah, Idaho, and Colorado, with each attack becoming more violent, more merciless. He would leave no trace behind, no clue as to who he was. The police forces in multiple states scrambled to connect the dots, yet Bundy's charm continued to shield him. People couldn't believe that someone so normal could be capable of such horrors. He was a master of blending in, hiding behind his appearance, and smooth-talking ways. Despite the mounting evidence, Bundy remained untouchable. He slipped away each time the police closed in, leaving them frustrated and the public in terror. It was as if he thrived off the fear, using it as fuel for his horrific acts. With each new disappearance, the police grew more desperate. They knew they were dealing with a predator, but they had no clear profile. Witnesses had reported seeing a young man named Ted, often with a cast or crutches, but that was all they had. Investigators combed through evidence, building a case piece by piece. They were connecting dots between each disappearance, trying to predict his next move. But Bundy was always one step ahead, his trail cold before they could get close. The lack of solid leads left the police and the public frustrated. Everyone was on edge, waiting for the next woman to disappear. And Bundy seemed to know this, taking pleasure in staying one step ahead, outsmarting everyone who was after him. In August 1975, the law finally caught up to Ted Bundy. A routine traffic stop in Utah became his undoing. Bundy's tan Volkswagen Beetle was spotted by a patrol officer, acting suspiciously. When the officer pulled him over, he found handcuffs, a crowbar, and a ski mask inside Bundy's car, a disturbing collection of items that hinted at his sinister intentions. The police arrested Bundy on suspicion of burglary, but they soon realized they might have a far more dangerous man in custody. The items found in his car closely matched descriptions given by witnesses. It looked like they might have captured the elusive Ted at last. But even in custody, Bundy's charm was relentless. He claimed innocence, insisting he'd been wrongly accused. His smooth talking and calm demeanor made it difficult for many to believe he could be a cold-blooded killer. The police, however, weren't convinced and began digging deeper. Once in custody, investigators began linking Bundy to disappearances in multiple states. Hair samples found in his car matched some of the missing women, strengthening the case against him. Witnesses from earlier abductions identified him in a police lineup, providing more critical evidence. Despite the mounting proof, Bundy maintained his innocence, denying any involvement in the crimes. He represented himself in court, confidently arguing his own case with unsettling calm. To many, it seemed like he was toying with the legal system, using every opportunity to outsmart it. The investigation expanded to Colorado, where Bundy was also suspected of crimes. Detectives in multiple states began piecing together a horrifying picture of the man they had in custody. They knew they were dealing with a ruthless and cunning predator, one who had perfected the art of manipulation. Then, in June 1977, Bundy did the unthinkable. He escaped. While preparing for his trial in Colorado, he was allowed to visit the courthouse library. Seizing the opportunity, Bundy jumped from a second-story window, sprinting into the mountains. The police launched a massive manhunt, scouring the mountains and nearby towns, but Bundy had already vanished. He spent several days on the run, stealing food and clothing to survive. The audacity of his escape shocked the nation, adding a new layer of fear to his already terrifying legacy. But Bundy's freedom was short-lived. After nearly a week on the run, he was caught by police once again. Yet even behind bars, he remained defiant, planning his next move. It seemed nothing could keep Ted Bundy locked away, not even maximum security. Bundy was determined not to stay in prison. Just months after his first escape, he managed to break free once again. This time, he cut a hole in the ceiling of his jail cell and climbed through, escaping undetected. By the time guards noticed he was missing, Bundy was already miles away. He headed south, traveling undetected across multiple states. Each day he remained free, the public's fear grew. People across the country were terrified, knowing that a dangerous killer was once again loose. Authorities scrambled to track him down, but Bundy stayed hidden. This time, Bundy's escape would lead him to Florida, where he would unleash his most brutal attacks yet. The sense of power and control he gained from his escapes seemed to fuel his desire for violence, and he was ready to make his next horrifying move. On January 15, 1978, Bundy struck again, this time in Tallahassee, Florida. In the early hours of the morning, he slipped into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University, carrying a wooden club. What followed was a scene of horror beyond imagination. Bundy brutally attacked 4 women in their sleep, leaving 2 of them dead. He moved silently from room to room, bludgeoning his victims without mercy. For the survivors, the attack left physical and psychological scars that would last a lifetime. The Chi Omega attack marked Bundy's most savage crime yet, one that stunned even seasoned investigators. The brutality, the brazenness of the assault showed that Bundy was spiraling further into darkness. He no longer cared about hiding. He wanted the world to feel his power. power. Just 3 weeks after the Chiomega attack, Bundy committed his final known murder. He abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, a bright and cheerful girl who was simply walking to her school. Bundy's cruelty had now crossed a line that shocked even those familiar with his crimes. Kimberly's disappearance was the last straw for authorities. The search for her became a nationwide effort, with law enforcement across the country desperate to catch Bundy and bring him to justice. But tragically, they were too late. Bundy had taken Kimberly's life, marking the end of his killing spree. Her murder added a new depth of horror to Bundy's crimes, solidifying his place as one of the most terrifying killers in history. His lack of remorse, his need to destroy innocence, showed the true depths of his evil. In February 1978, just weeks after Kimberly's murder, Bundy's luck finally ran out. A police officer in Pensacola, Florida, noticed a suspicious car driving erratically and pulled it over. Inside was Ted Bundy, finally cornered and out of options. Bundy initially gave a fake name, but officers quickly realized who he was. After years of hunting, multiple escapes, and countless lives ruined, Bundy was finally in custody for good. This time, there would be no more escapes, no more tricks. His reign of terror was over. For the families of his victims, the news brought a bittersweet sense of relief. They knew he would never again have the chance to hurt anyone, but the pain of loss was forever etched in their lives. Bundy had left a permanent scar on the hearts of everyone affected by his crimes. Bundy's trial was unlike any the country had seen. Held in Florida, it became a media sensation, with cameras broadcasting every moment to a horrified yet captivated audience. Bundy, representing himself, turned the courtroom into his own stage, often smirking and playing to the cameras. For Bundy, the trial was a game, a final opportunity to wield control. He cross-examined witnesses, argued with the judge, and even proposed to his girlfriend in the middle of the proceedings. It was as if he thrived off the attention, relishing his role as the star of his own horror show. Despite Bundy's theatrics, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Witnesses, forensic evidence, and his own chilling behavior in court painted a picture that was impossible to deny. The jury found him guilty of murder, sentencing him to death, and the courtroom erupted in relief and emotion. While awaiting execution on death row, Bundy continued to manipulate those around him. He granted interviews, maintaining his innocence for years. But as his execution date drew closer, Bundy began confessing to his crimes, hoping to delay his sentence by revealing the locations of undiscovered bodies. In these confessions, Bundy described the details of his murders with a chilling detachment, as if he were describing routine events. Each confession added another layer of horror, revealing just how calculating and remorseless he truly was. For the families of his victims, these confessions brought some closure, but they also reopened old wounds. Each detail reminded them of the cruelty he had inflicted on their loved ones, and each admission was a painful reminder of lives taken too soon. On January 24, 1989, after years of appeals and delays, Ted Bundy was finally executed in Florida's electric chair. Crowds gathered outside the prison, some holding signs of celebration, others chanting for justice. For many, it was a moment of closure, a long-awaited end to Bundy's reign of terror. As the switch was flipped, Ted Bundy's life ended, but the darkness he unleashed remained. His death marked the end of one of the most terrifying chapters in American history, a reminder of the horror that can hide behind a friendly face. Bundy's story became a symbol of evil, a cautionary tale that echoes even today. His name is a reminder that monsters sometimes walk among us, hiding behind charm and a smile, waiting to strike. Even after his death, Bundy's crimes cast a shadow that lingered. He changed the way society viewed safety, trust, and the very idea of evil. People who once felt secure now questioned strangers with suspicion, and women everywhere were reminded to stay vigilant. Bundy's crimes reshaped public awareness of personal safety and trust in ways no one could have imagined. For law enforcement, Bundy's case highlighted flaws in the system, from jurisdictional gaps to insufficient communication between states. This led to nationwide changes in investigative procedures, encouraging better cooperation between states and the development of databases to track serial offenders across borders. Bundy's legacy wasn't just one of horror, it sparked reform. His actions forced society to address vulnerabilities in policing and forensic methods, ultimately leading to improvements that would help protect others from similar horrors in the future. For the families of Bundy's victims, the grief remains eternal. The pain of losing loved ones in such brutal ways left a permanent scar on their lives. But in the face of unimaginable sorrow, these families showed remarkable resilience, working tirelessly to honor the memories of those taken from them too soon. Many of them became advocates for victims' rights, ensuring that no family would have to suffer the same injustices alone. Their strength became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, love and memory can outlast the evil that took their loved ones away. The memories of these young women, daughters, sisters, friends, live on in the hearts of those who knew them. The family's courage in sharing their stories has kept their legacy legacies alive, reminding the world of the real people behind the headlines and statistics. Bundy's case was one of the first to capture the public's fascination with the term serial killer. His crimes shocked the nation, marking a turning point in how society viewed and understood individuals capable of repeated, senseless violence. It wasn't just the crimes but the mind behind them that terrified and intrigued people. Psychologists, criminologists, and even the public began examining the psychological factors that could lead someone to commit such heinous acts. The media coverage sparked an unprecedented interest in the criminal mind, leading to a surge in research on psychopathy and criminal behavior. Bundy's case became a catalyst for studies on profiling and understanding repeat offenders, giving rise to behavioral profiling techniques that would be used to track and capture future serial killers. Bundy's name would forever be associated with the darkest side of human nature. Bundy's crimes presented unique challenges for psychologists who found themselves grappling with his complex and contradictory personality. He was charming, intelligent, and outwardly normal, yet capable of committing unimaginable violence. Psychologists began studying his behavior to understand what drove his monstrous actions. His ability to charm and manipulate highlighted traits commonly associated with psychopathy: a lack of empathy, a need for control, and a disturbing detachment from the suffering of others. Bundy became a textbook case for the study of psychopaths, helping experts understand how such individuals can deceive and manipulate. Bundy's legacy in psychology is as dark as his crimes. He revealed the extreme capabilities of the human mind to commit evil without remorse. His case became a foundation for profiling, a tool that would help in identifying and stopping future predators before they could strike. Ted Bundy's case forced law enforcement to confront the gaps in communication between states, especially with high-profile fugitives. The multiple jurisdictional challenges faced in tracking Bundy's crimes highlighted the need for better coordination and data sharing among police departments nationwide. Following Bundy's case, agencies worked to develop better systems for tracking offenders across state lines. This led to the creation of shared databases and tools that now play a crucial role in catching and tracking serial offenders across the country. His case taught law enforcement a hard lesson. Sometimes, killers don't fit the stereotypes. With his charm and intelligence, Bundy broke the mold, proving that killers can be anyone. This knowledge has reshaped how investigators look at suspects, helping them catch perpetrators who might otherwise go undetected. Even decades after his death, Bundy remains a figure that captivates the public. Books, documentaries, and films explore his life, trying to understand what drove him to such acts of violence. His story speaks to humanity's deepest fear, that evil can look like anyone, even someone friendly and charismatic. The fascination with Bundy and killers like him has opened debates on the media's role in sensationalizing criminals, making them infamous and turning their stories into dark entertainment. The question remains, are we studying them to understand, or has society crossed a line, giving these monsters too much fame? For many, the lasting fascination with Bundy serves as a haunting reminder. It warns us of the hidden dangers in society, of the darkness that can hide behind charm. His story lives on, not as a tale to glorify, but as a chilling cautionary example of what can happen when evil goes unchecked. In the end, Ted Bundy's story is one of terror, manipulation, and the unimaginable suffering he inflicted. But it's also a story of resilience, of families who rose above grief, of police who reformed their methods, and of society learning to confront the darkest corners of the human mind. Bundy's life and crimes revealed a truth most don't want to face. Evil doesn't always look like a monster. It can wear a friendly face, walk among us, and hide behind a smile. His story is a reminder that trust must be earned, and that sometimes caution is the best defense. Though he is gone, Bundy's shadow remains, a ghostly reminder of the lives he destroyed and the lessons he forced us to learn. His name serves as both a warning and a memory, a reminder to stay vigilant and never forget the victims whose lives were taken far too soon. As we end this journey through one of history's darkest stories, remember the young women whose lives were cut short and the families who still carry their memory. Evil may wear a charming face, but truth and justice always seek to prevail. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, consider subscribing for more true crime documentaries where we uncover the shadows left behind by those who've crossed into the darkest corners of human nature.